All right, so this is a test. My previous live had some echoes, so I'm going to try this again. And I'm going to go through this example audio from a previous client of mine who gave me permission to share this audio. And just going to talk a little bit about some of the things I hear and their accent in English. This is someone, with a Brazilian accent, trying to get closer to an American accent. And as always, you don't have to do that, but I focus on Brazilians who already speak English really well, who want to get closer to an American accent, potentially even to, in the ideal sense, maybe even pass as American some meaningful amount of the time. But as a more realistic short-term goal, just to move a bit closer towards sounding like an American, reduce a bit of friction, speak a little bit more clearly, develop a little bit more confidence, be able to focus more on what you're trying to say, the content of the message rather than the accent, and to allow the same for your listeners so that they could be less distracted by accent type stuff and more focused on the message that you're actually trying to communicate. So yeah, if that's you, I do help people with that. And but here I want to just demo a little bit of some of how I analyze accents and help people. All right, so let's explore this.
Hi Will, I'm Lucas. I'm a senior software engineer at Amazon.
So for instance, in Amazon, and this is software I made by the way, Amazon kind of did on instead of on.
Amazon.
Zone, whereas I would do zon, Amazon. And also
Engineer at Amazon.
Amazon. I usually do am. So instead of am, I do am, which is what I'm calling band versus dress. Amazon. Let's see other stuff. And Will.
Hi Will.
Will. Kind of did a oo instead of a ol. So that's what I call dark L versus oo or o.
Software engineer.
And also over here we can see some of the common patterns, T versus TS. I think I was a bit overcorrecting on at the time that I analyzed this. But let's focus on kit versus fleece. So there's a bunch of words. Brazil. Let's actually highlight just those. So there's Brazil, city, meetings with, etc. And each of these, this person did, should have been an I, but they did more of an E. So with came out kind of like weeth.
Frequent meetings with.
We've. Also, I think he did a, kind of an F instead of a TH. So instead of weef, we want to do with, kind of like a fechado do Português, and then a TH sound, which is the tongue touching the upper teeth, not the lower lips touching the upper teeth. So not f, but th, with. And also, if you hear a dog in the background, that's my dog who decided to walk back and forth while she's eating. So you might be hearing that in the background, but that's okay. She's participating in today's live.
With the data team.
All right, let's see what else. Maybe in is another good example. A lot of Brazilians say in, whereas I say in.
Works in a.
Kind of did in, and I would do ina. Anyways, that's just a bit of how this works. Let's look at some words that are related to this person's career. So, for instance, things like authorization, authentication.
Authorization.
So, au versus a, I would say a, and then
authentication. Authorization.
And the th kind of came out like a T. So I would say author, authorization, and they kind of did outer. So I would say author, they kind of did outer, authorization instead of authorization.
And authentication.
Similar thing in authentication, I would do a, and they kind of did ow, and also the, and they kind of did te. Let's hear that again.
Authentication.
Authentic, and I would do authentication, either way. But in authorization and authentication, the key thing is I'm not saying ow, I'm saying more like ah. All right, I think that's good enough for today, because this is mainly a test to see if my audio is working. Hopefully it sounds better today than last live. I'm going to rewatch this and see how it looked. If you want my help, check out, there should be a link in my YouTube profile. You can go to Instagram. There's links there. And you could possibly become a one-on-one client, and I'll do this kind of stuff with you over the long term, at least 1 month, but possibly, multiple months, as we get to know each other deeper and do weekly Zoom calls and dive deep into your specific accent. All right, so I think that's good enough for today. Have a good one.